Hi. You welcome to the Style Made Simple by Dressens channel, your one-stop fashion academy that allows you to learn in the easiest of ways how to cut out your outfits without patterns and also how to assemble them in a very professional manner. Now, it is also a lifestyle and fashion tidbits channel. You're welcome once again. The beauty of a garment when it is all made up depends on a lot of factors. What are some of these factors? One is correct interpretation of style line. Number two is correct method of taking the measurements, and then correct application of the measurement. That is, it is one thing to take the measurements and then another thing to use the measurements correctly. Number three, good dressmaking techniques. What are your dressmaking practices? This is also important. Number four, pressing your garments along as you sew, and a lot of others. But today's tutorial is centered on one of these important aspects, and that's measurements taking. Now, if you take the selection of fabric out and you take the selection of style out, measurements becomes the next most important thing for every sewing project. It becomes the bedrock and the foundation for your sewing projects. The data measurement provides will determine the size, the cut, the flow, and finally the fit of the garment. And so it is quite obvious that this is a very important part of garment making, and you want to be careful with how you use your measurements, how you take the measurements, and how you apply the measurements whilst working, in order to avoid or eliminate fitting problems. If there are going to be fitting problems, they should be very minimal. Now, before we do our practicals on how to really take the measurements, let's consider these few points. Before you take measurements, let's make sure that the figure is wearing the correct foundation garments. That's your undergarments, the ones you wear under before you wear the outer garments. If you are one who is used to wearing padded bras, and you are one who is used to wearing corsets to tuck your tummy in and all that, please make sure you're wearing those same foundation garments before the measurements are taken, so we can get the correct figure and get a correct fitting for the garment. What usually happens is that a figure might show up with the normal body size without any preps to the body, no padded bra, no corset or anything, and then the measurement is taken. That measurement is used to sew the outfit. Now, when the outfit is ready, then the person decides, okay, I want to prep the body a bit, so I'm going for my padded bras and I'm going for my corsets and tummy trimmers and all that. What you do is that you've altered the body size, and so the dress will now not fit perfectly. So if you know you are going to be using this foundation garment whilst dressing up, please also make sure you're using these same foundation garments on your body before the measurements are taken. Number two, please, in the process of measurement taking, always make sure the figure is standing upright. Usually we have a tendency to check what's going on, especially when we are taking the lengthwise measurements. For instance, your dress length is being taken or your skirt length is being taken. We usually want to bend a little and see where the tape is ending. That is not necessary. Once you bend, you're not likely to get the correct measurement. So please always maintain an upright figure, head up, chin up. Let the tape go down, and rather go with the feel of where the tape is ending rather than bending. The next point is that you're supposed to take the measurements in sequence. We usually have two sets of measurements. We have the horizontal measurements that usually go across the body, like the bust measurements, the waist measurements, the hip measurements, and all those others that go across the body. And then we have another set that are the vertical measurements that go the lengthwise of the body, like the shoulder to waist measurements, the top length, the skirt length, and all that. Now here's what we do. Let's do one set first. Usually we start with the horizontal measurement, bust, waist, hip, etc. So let's do all the horizontal measurements, and then we can now move on to the verticals, and then we take all the vertical measurements. It makes the work orderly, and then makes you also work professionally. Now the last but not the least point to consider is when you are taking a plus size measurement. Usually it becomes a bit difficult to determine the person's waistline or the person's midriff. You want to know exactly where that waistline is before you start working on the figure. So usually what you do is you're going to ask the figure to tilt a bit towards the left or tilt a bit towards the right. Once the person does that, there's going to be a little dip at the side or a little dent at the side. Where that dip or dent is will most likely be the person's natural waistline. So you tie a cord around there, or you tie a string around there to make sure you have secured or you have located the waistline, and then you can start business. So now that we have the general information on what to do when we are taking measurement, it shouldn't be too difficult for us. So let's go take our measurements. Hi, you're welcome to the practical segment. Meet our model for today's assignment. She's Martha. Martha, say hi.
Hi.
Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start with the horizontal measurements. Those are the measurements that are going across the body. And so the first set we're going to be taking will be the bust measurement. And so we're going to be working for all purposes or for all projects on the Style Made Simple by Bresson's channel. We're going to be using our measurements in inches. So you're going to be using this part of the tape. So let's take our bust measurement first. So you're going to put the tape around the figure and then across the back, and then meet at the side here. Now you make sure you're positioning the tape correctly, both in front and also at the back. Please do not allow the tape to drop. If the tape drops, you're going to alter the measurement. So across the back, through the front, or the highest parts of the bust. Now the tape should not be too tight on the body, neither should it be too loose on the body. And so for the bust measurements, we have 34. Now you're doing the same thing around the waistline. She has a very petite figure, so it's quite easy to locate where her natural waistline is. So again, you do the same thing. It goes around the waist, and then at the back, you also make sure the tape is straight across. And so we have 28 for her waist measurements. We are now moving to the hip. Now the hip should be the widest part of the hip. The whole area from the waist down to this point is her hip area. But the question is, where exactly do we take the hip measurements? We're supposed to take the hip measurements around the widest part of the hip. And so we're going to put the tape around the widest part of her hip, across her back, correctly like this, and then make sure we have the tape not too tight nor too loose. So for her hip measurements, we got 37. Now we're moving back up, still on the horizontals. We're going to take the across chest measurement, and then we are also going to take the across back measurement. It is always important to take both the across chest and the across back measurements, because sometimes you have two sets of measurement for the body. You could have the back broader than the front, or the front broader than the back. It is important to get the exact figure so you can have a very good armhole curve. So the across chest measurement is taken just on top of the bust from one armhole point to the other armhole point, like this. So again, the tape should be very straight. Make sure you don't eat too much into the arms. So we have 13 for the across chest, and then we're going to be taking the across back measurements also from one armhole to the other armhole point here. And so you realize that the measurement for the across back has changed a bit. We have 14 for the across back measurements. Okay, now let's move to the last but not the least horizontal measurement. We have the shoulder measurement. The shoulder measurement is from the highest point of the shoulder to the sloping, where the sloping of the shoulder ends. So the standard size for a figure like hair should be 5 inches. So the other measurements depending on the complexity of the styles, but these are general measurements. So let's restrict ourselves to the shoulder measurements. Now that we're done with the horizontals, we're going to be moving to the verticals, and we're still going to do it in that orderly manner. And so for the verticals, we're going, again, place the tape at the highest point of the shoulder, and then let it come straight down. The first measurement to take is the true bust point. The true bust point is where the nipple is supposed to be. So we have, for her figure, we have 8.5. Now from the true bust point, we now take the under bust measurement. And so you manipulate the tape a bit to go under her bust, like this. So right under the bust here is where you have the true bust point. And then from the true bust point, we are moving to the waistline. The waistline should be somewhere here. And so we have a waist, shoulder to waist. So this is the shoulder point to the waistline is 16. So we have 16 as a shoulder to waist measurement. And then we are moving to the top length, the length of the top. If it's a blouse, we're using, these days we don't want too long tops, so we end at 22 or 23. And then we can even go on and take, so you still keep the tip in position and not necessarily at the top, but keep it here from the 23, and then we can take our dress length. Okay, so her knee length, dress length would be 39. So with the 39, we are going to continue with skirt measurements. And so for the skirt measurement, we are going back to our natural waistline, and then we are going to take the first measurement for the skirt area is our hip depth measurement. The hip depth measurement is the distance from your natural waistline to the widest part of where the hip juts out. We need this measurement to be able to shape our skirts correctly. And so her hip depth is 8. We have hip depth 8 or 7. If you want it a bit high-waisted, you can use 7. And so from the hip depth, we are now moving to the skirt length. We're going to go down and get the length. Again, I'm using the knee as my guide if it's a basic short skirt. So for the skirt length, we have 23. And then you can continue, if you want a longer skirt, you continue downwards to the ankle area to get the full length of the skirt. If you want a very long skirt, you want a full length of the skirt. So these are the basic sets of measurements, and then probably we could have the sleeve length, which is 6, and then I forgot to add the around arm when I was taking the horizontal measurement. So this should have gone to the horizontal measurement. So we have the sleeve length, and then we have the around arm measurements. So it's not been too difficult to take this measurement. Please practice at home. Practice makes perfect, and then you can perfect the art of measurement taking. The word for today is fad. F-A-D. Fad in fashion terms means a trend or style that suddenly becomes very popular. Everyone wants to associate with it. But unfortunately, it just disappears as suddenly as it came. We wake up and we are all into big puffs, into bell-bottom trousers. Everybody wants to wear it. We are all going up and down in our big puff sleeves and our bell-bottom trousers. 3, 4, 5 months down the lane, suddenly no one wants to wear these puff sleeves or bell-bottom trousers. They become outdated. That's what a fashion fad is. But the good thing about fashion though is that it evolves. So what goes round will definitely come round. It will go out of fashion, yes, it will become outdated, yes, but sometime ahead it would pop up again and the whole trend will start. I hope you have enjoyed our tutorials. Please, if you haven't subscribed to the Style Made Simple by Blessings channel, this is the time to do so. Please hit the subscription button and join us, and that's anytime when new videos are uploaded, you'll be notified. Thank you for sticking with us to the end. Hope to see you in our next tutorials. God bless and bye.